I had always wanted to spend a weekend in a cabin in the woods, away from the noise and stress of the city. I found a cheap rental online and booked it without hesitation. It looked cozy and rustic, just what I needed. I arrived at the cabin on a Friday evening, after driving for hours on a winding road. The sun was setting and the air was chilly. I grabbed my backpack and entered the cabin. It was dark and dusty inside, but I didn't mind. I found a flashlight and some matches and lit a fire in the fireplace. I felt a wave of relaxation wash over me as I sat on the couch and watched the flames. I decided to explore the cabin a bit. It had 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, a kitchen, and a living room. It was small but comfortable. I noticed some old books and magazines on a shelf, and a radio on a table. I turned on the radio and tuned it to a music station. I heard a crackling sound and a faint voice. "Hello? Is anyone there? Please help me. They're coming for me. They're coming for me. They're coming for me." I froze. The voice sounded terrified and desperate. It repeated the same words over and over. I felt a chill run down my spine. Who was this? Where were they? What was happening? I tried to change the station, but the voice followed me. It was the only thing I could hear. I turned off the radio and threw it on the floor. The voice stopped. I breathed a sigh of relief. It must have been a prank or a hoax, I thought. Some sick joke by the previous renters. I decided to forget about it and go to bed. I was tired and hungry, and I had brought some canned food and water with me. I ate a quick meal and went to the bedroom. I locked the door and crawled into the bed. I pulled the blanket over me and closed my eyes. I hoped to have a good night's sleep. I woke up to a loud bang. It sounded like someone had slammed the door. I jolted up and looked around. It was pitch black. I reached for the flashlight, but it was gone. I felt a surge of panic. What was going on? I heard footsteps outside the bedroom. They were heavy and slow. They stopped at the door. I heard a knock. Then another. Then another. They became louder and faster. Someone was trying to break in. I screamed. I jumped out of the bed and looked for a weapon. I found a knife in the drawer and held it in my hand. I backed away from the door and waited. The knocking stopped. I heard a click. The door opened. I saw a silhouette in the dark. It was tall and thin, with long arms and legs. It had no hair and no face. It was a monster. It stepped into the room and reached for me. I stabbed it with the knife. It let out a horrible shriek and fell to the floor. I ran past it and out of the room. I ran to the living room and looked for the exit. I saw the front door. It was open. I ran towards it. I stopped. I saw another monster standing in the doorway. It was identical to the first one. It blocked my way. It smiled at me. It had no teeth and no eyes. It had a mouth full of blood. It spoke to me. It said, "Hello? We've been waiting for you. We've been waiting for you. We've been waiting for you." I had always wanted to go camping in Utah, so when my friend Jake invited me to join him and his family for a weekend at the River Pond campground, I didn't hesitate to say yes. He said they had rented a cabin near the river, and that there were plenty of things to do in the area, like fishing, hiking, biking, and kayaking. It sounded like a perfect getaway from the city life. I packed my bags and drove to the campground on Friday afternoon. Jake had given me the directions and the cabin number, so I didn't have any trouble finding the place. The campground was spacious and well-maintained, with lots of trees and greenery. I parked my car near the cabin and got out. I saw Jake waving at me from the porch. He looked happy and relaxed. "Hey man, you made it," he said, as he came down to greet me. "Welcome to paradise." He gave me a hug and helped me with my luggage. He introduced me to his wife, Lisa, and his 2 kids, Sam and Amy. They were all very friendly and welcoming. They showed me around the cabin, which was cozy and comfortable. It had 2 bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen, and a bathroom. It also had a fireplace, a TV, and a Wi-Fi router. Jake said they had brought their own laptop and some DVDs, in case we got bored at night. We settled in and decided to go for a walk around the campground. Jake said he wanted to show me the river and the trails. He said the river was great for fishing and kayaking, and that there were some rapids downstream that were fun to ride. He also said there were some hiking trails that led to some amazing views of the mountains and the valley. He said he had a map of the area in his backpack, and that we could pick any trail we wanted. We left the cabin and walked towards the river. The sun was shining and the air was fresh. I felt a surge of excitement and anticipation. I loved being in nature, and I couldn't wait to explore this place. Jake seemed to share my enthusiasm. He was talking non-stop about the campground and the things we could do. He said he had been coming here since he was a kid, and that it was his favorite spot in the world. We reached the river and followed its course. The water was clear and cold, and it made a soothing sound as it flowed over the rocks. We saw some people fishing on the banks, and some others kayaking on the water. They all looked happy and relaxed. Jake said he had brought his fishing rod and his kayak, and that we could use them anytime we wanted. He said he had also brought some marshmallows and hot dogs, and that we could make a bonfire by the river at night. We continued walking along the river until we reached a fork. Jake said we could either go left or right. He said the left trail led to a waterfall, and the right trail led to a lookout point. He asked me which one I preferred. I said I didn't mind, and that both sounded good. He said he had been to both, and that they were both worth seeing. He said we could flip a coin to decide. He took out a quarter from his pocket and tossed it in the air. He said heads for left, tails for right. He caught the coin and looked at it. Tails, he said. We're going right. He put the coin back in his pocket and led the way. He said the trail was not too long, and that it was easy to follow. He said the lookout point had a stunning view of the valley and the mountains. He said we could see the whole campground from there, and maybe even spot some wildlife. He said he had seen deer, elk, and even a bear once. He said we had to be careful and not get too close to them, especially the bear. We followed the trail, which was narrow and winding. It went uphill, through the woods. The trees were tall and thick, and they cast shadows on the ground. The trail was quiet and peaceful, except for the occasional sound of birds and squirrels. Jake said he liked this trail, because it was secluded and serene. He said he felt closer to nature here, and that he sometimes came here to meditate and relax. We walked for about half an hour, until we reached the end of the trail. There was a wooden sign that said, "Lookout Point." There was also a wooden bench and a metal railing. We walked to the edge and looked over the railing. The view was breathtaking. We could see the whole valley below us, with the river winding through it. We could also see the mountains in the distance, with their snow-capped peaks. The sky was blue and clear, and the sun was bright and warm. We felt a gentle breeze on our faces. We sat on the bench and admired the scenery. We didn't say anything, we just enjoyed the moment. We stayed there for a while, until we decided to head back. Jake said we should get back to the cabin before it got dark. He said it was not safe to walk on the trail at night, because it was easy to get lost or run into trouble. He said there were no lights or signs on the trail, and that the woods were full of dangers. He said we should always stick together and never wander off. He said he had a flashlight and a whistle in his backpack, in case of emergency. We got up and walked back to the trail. Jake said we should hurry, because the sun was setting and the night was coming. He said we should be back at the cabin in no time, and that we could have a nice dinner and watch a movie. He said he had brought some pizza and soda, and that we could heat them up in the microwave. He said he had also brought some horror movies, and that we could watch them on his laptop. He said he loved horror movies, and that they were perfect for a camping trip. We followed the trail, which was now darker and quieter. The trees were blocking the sunlight, and the shadows were growing longer. The trail was harder to see, and we had to watch our steps. Jake said we should turn on the flashlight to make it easier. He took out the flashlight from his backpack and turned it on. He pointed it at the trail, and we walked faster. We walked for about 10 minutes, until we reached the fork. Jake said we should go left, to get back to the river. He said we were almost there, and that we had made good time. He said we should be able to see the cabin from the river, and that we could follow the lights. He said we were lucky, because the campground had electricity and Wi-Fi. He said some campgrounds didn't have those, and that they were more primitive and rustic. He said he preferred this campground, because it had the best of both worlds. It had nature and comfort. We turned left, and followed the trail. We could hear the sound of the river getting louder, and we knew we were close. Jake said we should be able to see it soon, and that we should look for the bridge. He said the bridge was the easiest way to cross the river, and that it was near the cabin. He said we should avoid the rapids, because they were dangerous and fast. He said he had seen some people get hurt or drown there, and that it was not worth the risk. We walked for a few more minutes, until we saw the river. It was dark and cold, and it made a roaring sound as it flowed over the rocks. We could see some white foam and spray, and we knew those were the rapids. Jake said we should stay away from them, and look for the bridge. He said the bridge was a wooden structure, with metal cables and planks. He said it was sturdy and safe, and that it had a sign that said, River Pond Campground. He said we should be able to see it from here, and that we should look for the lights. We looked around, but we couldn't see the bridge. We couldn't see any lights either. We only saw darkness and water. Jake said we should move closer to the river, and see if we could spot the bridge. He said maybe it was hidden by the trees, or maybe it was farther down the river. He said we should be careful, and not get too close to the edge. He said the river was deep and strong, and that it could sweep us away. We moved closer to the river, and scanned the horizon. We still couldn't see the bridge. We couldn't see anything, except the rapids. Jake said we should keep walking.